Hey guys, this is my personal reflection after 72 hours of the disability stimulation. I had the second one, which was the traumatic brain injury status post craniotomy with right side weakness. So obviously, before even going into the questions, there were a lot of hard parts to doing this, but it was overall a very intriguing experience, and it left a mark on me. It's left an impression. It's something I'll never forget. Especially when working with patients someday and looking into their occupational profiles and seeing that they had a TBI or seeing that they had surgery like a craniotomy where, they literally went into their brain like a neurological surgery, then I can think back to this experience and sympathize even more with it, I feel like. So overall, it definitely taught me a lot, opened my eyes up to a lot of different things. But the most difficult part, besides the stairs out in public and everything like that, and having to deal with those hardships in the public eye, was the fact that I had that right side weakness. So I am right side dominant. My left hand, is actually the weaker side. But with the simulation, I had to use my left hand for just about everything because I had the weakness on the other side. So having to do everything with that was very difficult and just something I wasn't used to. But with the part one, first question I chose was, what did you learn from this experience, and how will it help you to be a better clinician? So my first outing, having to wear the helmet and using the quad cane, proved to be very difficult. I was very hesitant about having to walk into the Dollar Tree in town with having to wear this headgear, the hard shell protective helmet. Because obviously I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm doing a disability simulation, but the public didn't. So I had a lot of stares, a lot of judgments, and that took a lot of getting used to. I don't like being the center of attention or having that kind of look thrown my way, so it was very uncomfortable, and I had to get there's a lot of getting used to with that. So the empathetic piece of this experience weighed heavily on me, made me realize that my complaints regarding it are kind of nowhere near what the actual individual who suffered a traumatic brain injury and underwent that surgery that also brought about that weakness would feel. So, like, at the end of the day, I don't actually have a traumatic brain injury, but after the first day of this simulation, it began to get easier for me. I ended up being able to go out to eat. I walked around the mall. I shopped without giving it a lot of thought. By then, it was a lot more effective to kind of fully grasp the meaningfulness of this assignment. But yeah, as I said, I felt like it's definitely going to make me a better clinician in the future because I had the ability to place myself in a TBI patient's shoes while immersing myself into community activities. So it showed me the difficulties faced by them to a much lesser degree, and having to walk everywhere with that cane, and remembering that I couldn't really use my right side because I had that right side weakness. It's kind of hard to keep telling myself, oh yeah, you have to make sure you pretty much do everything with your left hand. But yeah, it did open my eyes a lot to it. I also saw that my roommate was struggling with her disability because she had the laminectomy, so she had to wear the neck brace, and seeing both my troubles and her troubles, it really kind of showed me how profound this really is. So I can think back to this assignment someday, remember how it made me feel, empathize, and connect with my patients even more. With the third question of part one, what did you learn about the ADL-IADL process throughout the 72-hour disability simulation? So throughout my 72 hours, I completed an abundance of ADLs, like self-care, with brushing my teeth, with washing my face, getting dressed for the day, with the helmet on at all times pretty much, besides sleeping. Obviously, brushing your hair, you could only brush the hair that was out of the helmet part. So that was difficult. Another area that was difficult was dressing because you have to get your shirt, your top over that big bulky helmet. So with an actual patient who has to wear this at all times or pretty much all the time, you'd have to probably adapt and use a button-down shirt or something that you don't have to pull over your head. So, but washing my face, brushing my teeth, those kinds of things obviously weren't impacted. Besides the fact that I had to use my left hand and try not to use that weak side as much, that compensating and everything with that, extremely difficult. But getting ready for bed at night was also another ADL that I took part in. The functional mobility, so the cane kind of made you have to walk pretty slow. I ventured out into the community a lot, and I went to places like the dollar store, Target, the mall, food court, the gym, the library, to complete the IADLs. So the food preparation, like driving, community mobility, home establishment, and management, with maintaining like the upkeep of my apartment and shopping. Those were all areas that I had to do. Some were difficult than others. But there was also the formal education participation, because when Monday rolled around, I had to wear the helmet the entire time. So the helmet was very big on my head, and it would kind of slip down every once in a while, even when I had like a thick hat underneath to try to prevent this. So that was kind of distracting, kind of annoying, because it was like sometimes it'd fall to like even where you couldn't even see my eyes, because I have a really small head as it is. So that part, especially in class, I noticed was kind of tricky. Oh yeah, showering and bathing, that would be another area that would be kind of weird if you had to wear the helmet even in the shower. I didn't, but that would also be an area to consider. And then the sleep, like I said, would be extremely uncomfortable with the helmet on at all times while sleeping. It prevents you from really being able to move around in bed as much as you would like to. Some more areas of difficulty were with like pushing a shopping cart, because I had that cane that I had to keep a hold of in my left or in my right side, or in my left side, I should say. So I had to keep that cane there. So yeah, I usually had a friend out within the public with me, and sometimes they did have to help me with things like that. I also found going up the stairs to get to my third floor apartment was kind of difficult with my quad cane, because the stairs are they're not super thick, they're pretty thin, and the 4 pieces to the quad cane, the base of it, didn't always fit perfectly onto the steps. So it just kind of made me consider that someone who actually would have this disability and that right side weakness on top of it, and maybe some pain and whatever, it would make it very tiresome, and it wouldn't be very handicapped accessible, like the stairs for a quad cane like that. So with part 2, the first question, did you experience empathy and or sympathy during your disability stim, and how did it affect your self-esteem? The self-esteem piece of this was huge with the helmet like that. I was very concerned with how I looked and how others would perceive me. So it just really made me realize how much society kind of looks at those with disabilities and really kind of doesn't treat them as an equal. So that was a big part of the self-esteem part. Then I obviously saw how it would make you experience empathy and sympathy a lot more. Probably more so sympathy, though. With empathy, it's like the understanding and sharing the feelings of others. And although I can now sort of say that I understand what these patients go through, at the end of the day, I don't have a TBI, or I didn't have the post-craniotomy. So I don't really know it to the full extent. However, with the sympathy part, it led me to being even more non-judgmental towards it, and communicating that understanding about it. So a lot of feelings popped up about like the pity and sorrow that I have for the misfortune that those with TBIs deal with, and increased that. You'll see TBI and all that in textbooks. We've learned about it in a lot of our classes, but this is a completely different spin on that, where you take it a step further and you're actually trying to put yourself in their shoes. But yeah, I find it very sad oftentimes that TBIs are brought about because of car accidents or because of other kinds of trauma. So it kind of puts the person's life on hold, and it really changes everything. So do I feel this assignment is controversial? I thought this question was very interesting, so I chose to answer it. I said that there are ways in which I could see that it would be controversial. One reason may be the fact that we are posing as someone out there who actually has the disability and has had to go through the surgeries, the turmoil, the ups and downs. And so even with stimulating it, we'll never really truly understand how a person with a TBI, stroke patient, cerebral palsy, diabetes, hemianopsia, how all these people actually feel. So we're all out in the public receiving the attention and sympathy they always do, but not to the same extent. I have, there's a fellow friend of mine within the OT program who exclaimed to me that while out at the store, she had a sling on, and these old ladies kind of inquired about it and she explained it, but then they responded, "Oh, so you're faking it." So yeah, I can see how the controversy is definitely there with this. For part 3, the first question, what was it like to go out into the community with your disability? And then thinking about a client with the physical limitations you experience, what are the recommendations and training for a bunch of different areas like enhancing functional mobility, physical transfers, wheelchair management, and then providing a reflection on my meal. So, like I said, with mine, the hard part about this was going out into the community, dealing with the gaze of others, and then them wondering why I had a helmet on, while I was also wondering what kinds of thoughts or assumptions they were making up in their mind about me. So I had to try and focus on something else because it did grow very uncomfortable after a while. But I was often out in the public with a friend, so that was kind of helpful. It would be a lot harder if I would have done it alone, that's for sure. So with a TBI patient, as we learned in a lot of our classes, there's a lot of different ways that it can present, but there's usually that confusion or the disorientation, usually the inability to kind of remember new information, blurred vision, headaches, dizziness. So training on the usage of a quad cane would be very important for the family. You want to make sure you walk with it slowly because there could be the tripping hazard, the wearing schedule of the helmet or everything to do with the helmet would also have to be discussed. So it would just be that education part on thoroughly educating the caregivers and the patient. For my meal, I chose to make spaghetti and meatball tacos. So with making the meal, I had to remind myself that I had that right side weakness. So again, pretty much everything I did was with that left side. So I always had that cane right on me, or if I wasn't directly holding onto it, I was leaning against the counter or whatever. The only kind of adaptive technique, or I should say more than adaptive equipment, would be to have like maybe a chair right behind the patient just in case they needed to take a break while cooking, to sit down for a little bit if they grew like to be too weak. With a TBI, there's a lot of cognitive impairments, so there would be the cognitive adaptive techniques that would be used as well. Probably more so than anything else would be the cognitive ones. So for the theory comparison, the theory that I drew was behaviorism. With this, it basically states that everything that we learn in our behaviors are through interaction with our environment. So it's the study of the observable behavior of people. So the question here becomes, is the environment helping this person to learn and grow based on behaviors, or is it doing the complete opposite? With MOHO, which was our group theory, it, as we know, looks into interaction with the environment as well. So that's the that's the piece of these two that kind of fit into place that makes them similar. But this theory takes this a step further. It looks into the internal part with 3 subsystems, being your volition, or that inner drive and want to do something, your motivation, habituation, or that daily routine and the actions, and how we perform those said actions. So the performance, which looks at your skilled actions. So I feel as though a big part of this is looking into the client's values, goals, and interests, which is part of that personal causation. With these patients, we need to know how they feel about their abilities and how they feel about mastering their environment and what they value altogether. The last question for the personal reflection was, what would make this assignment even better for students within the future? I couldn't think of a whole lot because, to be honest, I felt like it was a huge learning experience and a very unique and a unique kind of project to carry out. So, but the one part that I said maybe would make it better for students in the future was the fact that there might be some students who know a lot about diabetes or a lot about whatever disability we could get. So maybe having them choose that disability because they already have a lot of knowledge on it would be helpful. But other than that, I thought I had a lot of fun with this, and I thought I learned a lot from it. So, yeah.